Vince, you requested this time last week, sit-down interview, and I have to tell you, there are some questions that I've had for several years since we worked together at World Championship Wrestling, and I hope you're ready for them.
Well, that's whatever you've got.
First off, let's start off for the uninitiated out there. What exactly would your roles be? What would your duties be as a wrestling TV writer?
My duties as a wrestling TV writer is to assure there are as many eyeballs watching the product as possible. And that basically means, Mike, by any extremes necessary. You do what you have to do in order to put people in front of the television set watching your show, because whether you want to admit it or not, in this business, everything is ratings. In our case, everything is pay-per-view buys. So you do whatever you have to do to get people to watch the show.
And in your opinion, how much does the writer affect the success or failure of a television program?
Tremendously, Mike, because again, if you were the writer of this show, we would have a 2-hour wrestling match that nobody would watch, Mike. Okay, the show would fail. The show wouldn't be on the air right now. I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen. Is there a place for wrestling? Without question. This sport, as you call it, was built on wrestling. Does it need to change? Does it need to evolve? You're damn right it does. And one day, sooner or later, you will understand that.
Hey, Vince, at this point in time, do you feel any responsibility at all for the demise of World Championship Wrestling?
You know, Mike, let me explain something to you, because that question gets brought up 100 times. Do you understand? I was actually writing the television at WCW for 9 months. Do you understand that, Mike? 9 months. You tell me, how long was WCW in existence? How many years, Mike? How many years?
Many
10
years.
10 years? 15 years? And you mean to tell me you're stupid enough to believe that in 9 months, Vince Russo put that out of business? Well, you know what? If I did, maybe it deserved to go out of business then.
You know what? I think it was a very salvageable project at that time. No question. Look at the talent that WCW had. Look at the talent. Bill Goldberg, all the great cruiserweights that we had, Kevin Nash.
And why was I brought in, Mike? I was brought in because the product was in the shitter. I was brought in because the eyeballs weren't watching the show anymore.
Let me ask you some specifics.
They brought in the most successful writer in the history of the business, me. That's why I was brought in. So let's start there.
Let me ask you some specifics. In WCW, we had a signature trademark division called the Cruiserweights. Incredible talent. Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and I can go on and on. Why would you decide to take that Cruiserweight division and build it around Evan Courageous, a young wrestler, Ed Ferrara, one of your co-writers, and a woman wrestler by the name of Medusa?
Because people want entertainment, Mike. You want lucha libras, whatever you call them. Go to Japan, go to Mexico, you get all the lucha libras you want. Here in the United States, people want to be entertained. And there are about this many people that are entertained by guys jumping around in a ring for 40 minutes. You're entertained, but you know what, Mike? You don't mean shit. Okay?
Vince, what was the positive in tarnishing the image and the history of the World's Heavyweight Championship belt,
the prop,
by having David Arquette,
the prop,
as the World's Heavyweight Champion? Tell me the positive
I'll
to that.
tell you the positive, Mike, because what you don't understand is, was it a publicity stunt? Yes, Mike, it was a publicity stunt. And you know what? The next day, I opened up the USA Today, and there was a picture in the USA Today of David Arquette covering Eric Bischoff. Would we have gotten that kind of coverage if DDP won the belt that night?
So
what don't
in
you
other words,
understand?
you sold
it's a
your
business,
soul.
Mike.
You sold your soul for one day's mention of the USA Today.
You're damn right I sold my soul. How many people read USA Today, Mike?
Let me explain this to me. The week after that happened, why did the television rating for Monday Nitro drop to its lowest in 4.5 years? Why did the WWF's program have almost 3 times the audience that WCW did? 7.4 to 2.4.
Well, Mike, first of all, till you have those numbers here to show me, as far as I'm concerned, you're full of shit. You could sit around here and throw around all the numbers you want. I don't believe a word that comes out of your mouth. You want to show me those numbers? Then we'll talk about those numbers. All I know is USA Today was covering WCW for the only time in the history of the paper. Understand? Now you do.
Let's bring things up to date.
Let's bring it up to date.
Let's
bring it up how nobody started watching this damn show until Sports Entertainment Xtreme came in that back door. Let's talk about, Mike, 300 people being turned away last week because of Sports Entertainment Xtreme.
Let's talk about November 20th. What a memorable, historic night it was in this building. And I thought we finally had done it. Jeff Jarrett did a terrific promo the week before. He told the people exactly what it meant to him to finally fulfill his quest
And who cared?
as world's heavyweight.
And who cared?
There was
Who
incredible
cared, Mike?
heat in this building. I finally felt like we had
100
turned the
people
corner,
that were in here.
and you had to ruin it by your interference.
Ruin it? Mike, you've seen this building since then. Packed to the rafters. People screaming my name. People chanting Sports Entertainment Xtreme. You think they care what Jeff said? You think they cared about his tradition promo?
I heard it.
Promo? Yeah, you cared,
they
Mike.
cared.
And you're the only one. And if I leave this business in your hands and people like you, there won't be a TNA. I'm doing this for your own good, Mike.
You know, Vince, this is your chance. Tell us what your vision is. Tell us what your vision is for Sports Entertainment Xtreme. Sell me on this product.
Russo is a man with a heart and a soul who has 2 boys sitting at home. And you know what my vision is? I want my boys to be able to make a living in this business. But in order for that to happen, Mike, this business needs to be around. And if it continues to go the rate that you want it to be, and these jackasses at NWA are going, and Vince McMahon and his, I don't even know what that is on Monday nights going, there won't be a wrestling business, not 5 years from now, 1 year from now, Mike. And you know what? Don't say another word, because when all's said and done, you're going to be thanking me, and you're going to be kissing my big ass, Mike.
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to episode number 158 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 28 from January 15th, 2003. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the David Flair to my Mike Sanders. It's Cyndi. Cyndi, how the heck are you today?
Fuck you.
Wow. Such anger. You know.
Don't compare me to David Flair. I have more wrestling talent than he does. In one pinky.
I mean, to be fair, that does not take very much. You know. Well, what do you think would have been a fair comparison? I wouldn't call myself David Flair. David probably wouldn't have been able to press the record button correctly.
Well, you made your big mistake by starting out with Mike Sanders.
Well, I had forgotten to write or to come up with a comparison, and I just quickly scrolled down my notes and saw David Flair's name pop out at me, so that's where we got to that one.
Well, lesson learned. Sometimes the best comparison is none at all.
That might be a something that Vinny Rue could have taken note of there at the beginning, huh?
Yeah, let's start with the first. No, wait, we have to start out with, did the Observer say anything about TNA this week?
They did, and specifically about this opening segment. Vince Russo was said to obviously want to retape the opening segment because he realized how bad he looked during it, and was said to still be seething by the time the live show began. Raven and Just Incredible were both released by WWE on January 20th and will be on their way in. Obviously, one is a bigger deal than the other. And in some news for later on in the show, Jason Cross broke his hand during that match with David Young.
That kind of explains the finish. We'll get to that later.
Oh. Anyway, so the show begins, as you just heard, with the Mike Tenay, Vince Russo confrontation segment. It's on YouTube. You could have just heard the last 7 minutes of the show. But honestly, it's hilarious that Russo did not pick up on the fact that Tenay was setting him up. And this was not a scripted interview. This was, you know, Russo didn't want to know what Tenay was going to ask him and just fly off the cuff. And Tenay played him like a fucking fiddle here.
That's why he's the professor.
And it was like so fucking obvious. He's like, well, what's the role of a wrestling writer? And does the writer get the credit or the blame when things go good or bad? And it's like, dumbass, don't answer this question or come up with a better fucking answer. He set himself up for this shit. And it's like he comments during, if you want to see Lucha Libre, go to Japan. Good answer, Vince. Good answer there.
Well, he immediately says Mexico afterwards, so.
Well, um, and then when Tenay brings up the ratings on Raw versus Nitro the Monday after David Arquette won the damn title, it was like Russo's like, "Oh, that didn't happen, bro. Do you have those ratings in front of me, bro?" You know, and all he did was just keep yelling it louder and louder about the USA Today, and eventually stormed out. And by the way, um, I don't want to say that's one of the most overrated things of all time, but WCW had pictures in the USA Today before when they'd have, like Malone and Rodman,
Yeah.
wrestling in matches. So it's not like, this is a foreign concept to them. But God damn it, Russo killed the company so he could get one picture in the fucking USA Today.
Well, I'll be honest. I think the writing on the wall was the original beginning of the end was well before that. I have a date for that, or a rough
I,
date for that.
I'm afraid to ask, what is that random date?
October 1st, 1998.
October 1st, 1998. Any particular reason why that date came up?
Pro is canceled.
Okay.
Worldwide becomes a recap show.
Okay.
So Nitro starts having less matches and more drawn out sketches. The real damage is done like on a few episodes of Nitro where there's only like one match for the first hour. And there's an episode where there's like none at all. Like,
Okay.
and I'm talking about for the TV audience there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are some matches that took place in the arena, but what we saw at home was just 1 hour of Hogan jacking himself off with Hall and Nash.
And I'm afraid to ask, what did Pro and Worldwide have to do with that?
It essentially cut off their partnerships with New Japan and Mexico and who were they working with? AAA.
I honestly don't know. I think it was AAA, but I mean they were still working with them because they were still bringing in the Lucha Libre talent well into '99.
But not as much as they did when they had the secondary shows. And you still saw them on Saturday night, but not a lot.
Okay.
And that's 1 hour of ad revenue gone. And Worldwide's ad revenue got slashed, and the ratings started to go down across the board at that point.
All right.
So
I
that's
got it.
less ad revenue.
I got to tell you, this was not an argument I've ever heard anyone make before. But hey, at the end of the day, WCW dead. TNA on January 15th, 2003, kind of alive. Um, yeah, so after that, we get the normal opening video package and we go into the TNA Asylum. Mike was about to point out something that unfortunate had occurred when instead SEX's music plays and out comes Russo and the gang. And Russo has brought with him a soapbox to stand on. It's
I thought that
so
was clever.
yes, it's hilarious. Russo said this is between him and Jeff Jarrett. It has nothing to do with Tenay, Dusty, or the Road Warriors. They are not the NWO. They are not street thugs, but they're here to educate the idiots. And this brings out Percy Pringle, who said he is ready to talk. Um, I wrote, something tells me he is not joining SCX, and well, I might be wrong there. Percy says he's the only man in the building who knows the real Vince Russo, knowing him way back when he was a radio DJ, standing outside the New Haven Coliseum, begging wrestlers for interviews. That somehow transitioned him to getting a big job as a writer and bringing in midgets and giants and freaks and sports entertainment. And then he says Russo might be right. Maybe old school wrestling is dead and offered to shake Vince's hand. But before Russo would shake his hand, Vince said he's no different than Jeff Jarrett and The Undertaker. People that he created and made stars and then buried Russo on the way out. First of all, fuck that fucking bullshit. Like, but ignoring that for a second. Percy spat on Russo, so all 7 or 8 people in SEX attacked Percy Pringle. Jorge Estrada, of all people, ran in for the save and got destroyed and eventually put through a table by Daniels and Low Key.
You're forgetting there was a nasty gusher for Percy when BG nailed Percy with the soapbox. Something tells me that soapbox wasn't gimmicked correctly.
I don't know if it was a gimmick. I mean, it was a box that Russo was there to stand on. And I mean, in theory, it's supposed to be strong enough to hold a human being standing on it.
Yeah, and then Jarrett comes out, they all powder.
Yes. Shockingly, Jeff Jarrett continues to run off 8 people by himself.
Well, he also had a chair, so.
Alrighty. And so Tenay finally got to explain what the unfortunate thing he was going to mention earlier, and that's Amazing Red is not here. Turns out his Japanese bookings got extended, and so he will not be here to challenge for the X Division title, which actually screws up the booking for the next week, which we'll get to in a second. And that Jorge Estrada was going to be Amazing Red's replacement, but because he's a dumbass and hit the ring to get beat down by 8 guys, he is not in the match to wrestle against Sonny Siaki, for the X Division Championship. So we'll see what happens here, because this is, I don't even know if it's really a storyline that plays out, but it plays out throughout the show. We then get Tag Team Champions, America's Most Wanted versus Divine Storm with Trinity. Hey, remember like 6 weeks ago when Divine Storm won a #1 contenders match against AMW, and then AMW got multiple title shots in the meantime while Divine Storm was left off of multiple pay-per-views? And how I kept mentioning that over and over and over again? We finally got the fucking match.
It's about damn time. And you know what? Kind of worth the wait.
I don't know. I wasn't all into this here. Note Harrison Storm.
That's why I said kind of.
Well, Harrison Storm did their wild all over the place brawl that kicked off the match, and Divine Storm did their thing of being beaten down for minutes on end before Trinity was the one to cut off their opponent. The referee, who they pushed that he was a referee for over 20 years, does not care as Trinity does her spots on Storm, James Storm that is. Divine Storm almost won the belts when Trinity just ran into the ring and laid out James Storm, but James Storm kicked out. AMW went on to retain their titles when Storm pinned Divine after a death sentence. This whole thing has done nothing for Divine Storm. I get they want to get Trinity over as the new Lita, but the Hardy Boys did not need her to constantly interfere in order to have an advantage on somebody.
I thought the match was better than you're going to rate it. I don't know. It's just something about these two working well together, but not as well as the previous matches that they had, because they had 2 previous, and I thought those matches were better.
Well, I gave this match a 4.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 6, but our rating systems are vastly different.
except when they're exactly the same.
Well, that's because sometimes I use your rating system, especially with awful matches, which we might get to today. Hard, hard.
Oh boy, do we get to one today? All right, so then we get a video package, basically recapping everything going on with AJ Styles. And then AJ goes to the ring with a microphone. And he says he's not with Mortimer Plumtree anymore. He's not with SCX. He's his own man doing what he wants to do, and that is being the NWA World Champion. That brings out Ron Killings, who says AJ's got to be out of his mind, and that as a former champion, no one gets a shot until Truth does. And what's not mentioned is that he did get a match with Jarrett for the world title back on November 27th. However, forget that that ever happened, and somehow this breaks down into an actual match. AJ Styles versus Ron Killings, which is AJ's first official foray into the heavyweight division. I know the match was a little sloppy early on, including AJ somehow kicking Truth in the balls with both feet. They slowed things down, grabbed the hold, and got back on the same page. The finish saw Truth hit a face first suplex. Mortimer Plumtree ran down and jumped up on the apron. While the referee was distracted, David Flair ran in and hit Truth with the burlap sack. AJ rolled over Truth and got the pin. This did nothing for either person and does not make me think that AJ is at the level of someone in the heavyweight division when he needs two people to help him out, and specifically these two people. And yet I still gave it the same rating as the first match, a 4.0 out of 10.
I give it a 5.0 out of 10. The sloppiness kind of took me out of it. Also, the finish was 7,000 layers of bullshit. But I do like how AJ's trying to get Zip It over as a catchphrase like he's Morton Downey Jr. from the 80s.
I legit did not even notice.
I mean, we'll talk about more of his search for a catchphrase in the weeks to come. So backstage, we get an interview with Goldilocks talking to Jarrett and the Road Warriors. Jarrett was not impressed with his match. So no title shot for AJ. The thing is, all throughout the show, we're going to hear it multiple times, but they call Vince Russo a cancer. I'm like, I don't think he was born in June. I thought that he was more of a Sagittarius.
Aha.
But thank you for getting that.
Yes, I was too busy face palming to respond right away.
Thank you.
No
So they say they're going to destroy Triple X and Sex, and what a rush. So we go back to the arena. AJ is now shouting at Tenay, saying that you have some clout, you have some stroke around here, get me a title shot. So Tiny gets beaten up or shoved out of the way, his chair stolen, and he says, I'm not leaving until I get a title shot. Then from the golf course, out comes the two-handicapper himself, the living legend Larry Zbyszko.
I bet Nashville does have some nice golf courses.
I'm pretty sure they do. We drove by a couple of them during the road trip.
Interesting. So yeah, Larry fucking Zbyszko of all people. And Larry says AJ is Larry says AJ stand. Okay, I don't know. Tell me if I got this right, because what I wrote down was Larry says AJ is standing in the way of Larry's interview time. I don't think that's right.
I think Larry was going to be interviewed by Tenay during this time.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But anyway, Larry said he's here to remind people what tradition is. He wants to cut his wrists instead of listening to Russo. Oh well. Larry calls Russo a cancer, and if AJ sells his soul to Russo, then he'll never make the grade. Every time AJ tried to say something, Larry cut him off. Finally, AJ challenged him to a match and bitch slapped Larry. So yes, AJ Styles, who could barely beat Ron Killings, is now going to feud with Larry fucking Zbyszko. And
Ugh.
it gets worse.
Oh yeah, it does get worse in a few weeks.
Oh yeah. Like it really, 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 really does. And speaking of things that get worse from what we just saw, Desire, with Sunny Siaki in her corner, took on April Hunter, who technically had nobody in her corner, but Athena joined in. Um, so remember last week when Desire had three different names in 10 seconds? The good news is she finally has one name. That is the end of the good news about this segment. April has not been seen since doing the job for Miss TNA Bruce back in like September, I think it was.
Yeah.
Athena, who again, mind you, is the ring coat girl, stalked around ringside watching this match. And this match showed why there hasn't been an actual women's match in TNA since July. Desire won a very sloppy match with a Frankensteiner off the middle rope after Siaki interfered. This match was so bad I had to look up to see if Desire had ever wrestled before because Tenay said she wrestled for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, but I was having my doubts. And weirdly enough, not only had she wrestled before, she'd done like a dozen WWE dark matches and house show matches. Although to be fair, most of those were against Dawn Marie. But she did have a couple matches against Ivory. But seriously, where was she supposed to learn how to work? By wrestling fucking Dawn Marie? This is probably the worst match we've seen that was supposed to be taken as a serious wrestling match. Even worse than that Kurt Hennig David Flair axe on a pole match last week.
Mm,
0 out of 10.
I disagree with you there. It is not worse than Kurt Hennig versus David Flair. I thought the match was bad. Let's not mince words. It was bad. Um, I can't give it a 0. I'll give it a 1. Is essentially what I gave it. But at least it. Okay, can we talk about this? The reason why I gave it a 1 instead of a 0 because the post match was worse.
For the fucked up post match. So, um, what was supposed to happen? Desire was told to wear a skirt because she was going to be have her top and her skirt pulled off to be left in her underwear. Desire got her signals crossed, and I'm pretty sure wasn't wearing any panties because,
You mean Athena?
yeah, Athena. So Athena's supposed to be left in her underwear. However, I think she forgot to wear panties because she's wearing jeans, and you've never seen a better fight in your life than Desire trying to take her jeans off while Athena is fighting with every fucking ounce of energy she has to keep her pants on. And eventually Athena, eventually Desire just stops, and the music plays, and her and Siaki walk away.
I have the video up, and I
Okay.
can tell you right now, she is actually wearing underwear.
Well, she was certainly fighting like somebody who wasn't.
Well, maybe she doesn't mind showing the chest. Maybe she's just embarrassed about her butt or something. Who knows? Or she's got uh what do you call cellulite or something. Maybe
Alrighty.
she's got that. So yeah, so I understand not doing that. So Goldie's outside trying to get an interview with Dusty Rhodes, but out comes Mr. Wrestling 4?
We're really running through the Mr. Wrestlings.
Uh,
And it's noted that this is not Vince Russo. It's somebody who is in better shape than Vince Russo, which says something because one of the people that I just referred to will be in the main event wrestling match of this show.
Hmm.
But Mike Sanders is out next.
Oh boy.
I'd like to point out that Vince Russo's gang includes both Harris's, David Flair, and Mike Sanders. Sanders says his job is to acquire brand new wrestlers for SCX. And he says someone will be shit out of luck, which brings out Jerry Lynn. And before Lynn carries Sanders to the best match of his career, Lynn says he does his talking in the ring, bitch. And that leads us to our match, Jerry Lynn versus Mike Sanders, where Lynn almost wins in 24 seconds with a bulldog. I really wouldn't have complained too much if that was it. Don Harris
Neither.
Don Harris walked in to distract Lynn, which led to Sanders getting the heat. Sanders may have fucked up Lynn's elbow with a suplex at one point. Don yanked the referee out of the ring before Lynn could make his comeback. John tried to knock out his second referee, so Dusty Rhodes wandered out and elbowed Don, leading to Lynn pinning Sanders with a TKO. Mike Sanders, as we mentioned, a lot better on the mic than he is in the ring, but if there's anyone in TNA to make you have a good match, it's Jerry Lynn. 4.5 out of 10.
This might be one of the few instances where you will have a better grade than I do.
Okay.
I don't like Mike Sanders whatsoever.
So you'd have been happier if I called myself David Flair and you Mike Sanders?
Fuck you.
Wow. Such a violent person you've turned into.
Look, before the show, I had worked 6 days straight, mandatory overtime on Saturday, got into a bus accident coming home. So, yeah, my weekend's been peachy keen. Uh, I didn't feel this match as much as you did. Like Sanders did almost nothing during the match. He's practically useless. Um, like I would have been happier if the roles were reversed between Don Harris and Mike Sanders.
I don't know about that, kiddo.
I mean, to be honest, I would rather watch Don Harris than Mike Sanders.
I think I'd rather watch Dawn Marie than Mike Sanders.
Well, we both can agree on that. I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Alrighty. So then, now we're at what, 28 episodes into TNA, and
Mm-hmm.
there have been some good moments and some really, 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 really bad moments. I'm convinced Dusty Rhodes only ever watched one episode of this program up
Yep,
until the point that he showed up on this uh on here. And that's because Dusty did his promo, his first in-ring promo, and he gave a history lesson on how he became a wrestling fan. He says when he became a fan, the sign on the marquee said Pro Wrestling 8 p.m., not midgets beating off in a trash can 8 p.m. He tells the young guys in the back to prepare for war and to prepare to come out on top in the end. And he just kept bringing up the midget beating off in the trash can
that was the
over.
most embarrassing thing. In what was more embarrassing to TNA that Puppet did? Was it the beating off or the gun?
I don't know. The gun. I think the problem is the beating off in the trash can happened first. So by the time the gun happened, nobody gave a fuck. Plus, Jeff Jarrett saved the world by hitting him in the head with a chair, which is apparently what you do when somebody pulls a gun out at you. Um, there's something for all the kids in school to know when they're avoiding getting shot. Um, so at one point, BG James comes out of the locker room to watch, and Dusty promises to make Russo's night a living nightmare. Russo comes out, he hops on the announce table, and tells Dusty that he never thanked him for making his son a star. Russo talks about growing up and idolizing Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair, However, meeting them, he wanted to shave Ric Flair's head and smack Dusty's splotch off his gut, and he only did one of those two. Dusty told him to get his ass in the ring, so Russo made a challenge to make tonight's six-man tag in the main event into an eight-man tag. Dusty accepted, and the match is on. And Russo said that if his team wins next week, all three titles will be on the line, and he gets to pick the challengers. And then Russo told him to be aware, and that was it. Because, like I'm going to keep mentioning over and over and over again, on this show, you cannot just have two people wrestle and one person win and then move on to the next segment.
Well, speaking of that,
No
we then
comment. No comments on the Dusty promo.
it was fine. I don't care.
Okay, moving on.
My thought was essentially Dusty did a Dusty promo. Dusty's the star. By the way, it kind of makes me realize that when we did the best damn shows, you really went off on Dusty. Because this is, you said it was around this time where Dusty was just like, go the hell away for you.
Dusty was what?
Go the hell away.
I don't remember that. I just remember him booking himself to be the ultimate ladies' man, and that was just annoying AF.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Match number 5. Oh God. Jason Cross versus David Young. Now we already talked about what happened during the match. Now, when I saw this match take place, I was like, are you sure this is the pay-per-view and not Explosion? Because I know Tenay said that Explosion is going to start being syndicated. And it did kind of air here in Seattle, but like a really low-powered station got it. And it was on like 2 o'clock on a Sunday.
Okay.
Like this was a nothing match. Like this was filler, which didn't need like 7 minutes. So during the match, we'll just go over the highlights because the match was nothing. We see a graphic for NWA President Richard Arpin, who is in the corner watching the matches and not being excited about anything. During the match, Bola Bob comes out and says Sonny Siaki will defend the title tonight against Kid Cash. And Kid Cash has a surprise for Sonny Siaki, a nullifier for Desire. And Russo's wish is granted. 6-man becomes an 8-man. While this is going on, David Young actually gets a win over Jason Cross after Cross biffs his leg drop finisher, probably around the time where he broke his hand, gets the 3 and the win. 2 out of 10. Don't care.
I mean, that was the actual finish of the match. He missed the crossfire. Because, I mean, if he wasn't, it's not like David Young was, out of position or whatever. David Young rolled out of the way.
I know.
This was, the actual finish of it. So yeah, battle between two guys who only won one match on TNA pay-per-view, which meant that unlike that New Japan show last night, we were guaranteed to have a winner of this one.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, did you watch any of that New Japan show?
I was working mandatory overtime, and when I got home, I was dead tired. So no.
All right. So I've become a big Gabe Kidd fan after the Kenny Omega match a few weeks ago. And so he's wrestling Ishii last night, and they go to a 30-minute time limit draw. And okay, so they went to a 30-minute time limit draw. It was a fucking hell of a match, too. And okay, so you might be wondering, okay, they did a 30-minute time limit draw. What's the next match? The next match? Maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour time limit. No, the next match that Gabe Kidd challenged him for was a 30-minute Iron Man match. So when you don't win falls in 30 minutes, you need to have a match where the winner is the person who gets the most falls in 30 minutes. I think Russo's booking New Japan now.
Well, we don't know what the hell's going on with Bushy Road nowadays, so.
Actually, Russo was the August tournament we renamed the G Spot Climax, but at least we haven't gotten that yet.
Hold on, I'm writing that down. New Japan presents G Spot Climax. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
No problem. So I one second. I also gave it a 2.0. I said this is another example of TNA booking in a way to make you not give a shit about the match. During this match, Don West literally says he wishes this match had been earlier in the night so he could have paid attention to it. With that said, like I said, Cross showed how green he was in this match. And then before the match was even complete, the referee was making the winning 3 count. But before he'd even finished, BG James ran to the ring to confront his dad. Scott Armstrong, who was the referee, quickly dove out to get between them. And then Conan debuted to beat down both David Young and Jason Cross with a kendo stick. Conan was then run off by Nashville promoter Burt Prentice. And Conan notably left through another part of the arena that was not where SCX or where the usual roster comes from. To summarize, BG Scott and Bob Armstrong argued. Conan ran in and beat up 2 guys with a kendo stick, and he was run off by some fat promoter who's never wrestled a match in his life. Again, we cannot just have a match where someone wins and someone loses.
Right, and that's another reason why I thought this was Explosion, because Burt Prentice actually helps produce Explosion. He actually does some of the interviews during this time. Like, he was also kind of I guess this was kind of a make good for Burt Prentice, because during this time, his wrestling time slot got taken over by TNA.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. So, I guess, I don't know. I kind of wish now that TNA would actually put all of Explosion on TNA Plus, just so we can actually see the nonsense.
I mean, there's a guy on YouTube who puts up a lot of the old stuff. It's nothing that you really want to go out of your way to watch. Anyway, so we then go to X Division champion Sonny Siaki with Desire versus Kid Cash with Trinity. Cash is here because, as mentioned earlier, Red couldn't make it and Jorge Estrada was a dumbass. And Trinity is here to keep Desire from interfering. That is her point. That is why she is here. So Siaki shows why he's out of wrestling within 4 years by letting Cash throw a fucking chair at his unprotected head. And then Trinity fails at her only job as Desire hooks Cash's leg twice, and Trinity just stared at her from across the ring as Siaki hit the Siakalypse to retain the title. I gave it a 4.0 out of 10 because then after the match, Trinity, now that the match is over, she does the thing that she was paid to do, and that's go after Desire. She gives Desire a tornado DDT before Siaki drags her to safety.
This is a first.
What's that?
I think this is the first show where you have given higher scores than I did for multiple matches. I'm like, this is not a good match at all. Mainly because I think the match was cut by several minutes. Like, Dusty's promo was unbearably long. Like, you could get 3 minutes from that promo and put it in this match, and this match would have been better. You could have cut 5 minutes from Jason Cross versus David Young, put it in this match, it'd be better.
Was Dusty's promo even 3 minutes long?
It was 5.
Okay.
Or Zabisco's promo. I think that's what I meant. You could cut Zabisco's promo by 2 minutes and put it in this match. It'd be a better match.
I don't know. I think at this point they're killing this fucking crowd with this stupid fucking angle that the crowd does not give two shits about fucking wrestling anymore.
But then we get the Don West hype. Thank God it's back and Mike Sanders isn't interrupting it.
Although at this point, what the hell is the point? The hype for next week is AJ Styles versus Larry Zbyszko, and that they're going to be airing the shows in Australia. Why do we hate Australia so much? Personally, I think it'd be more interesting to show them the show and then film their reactions and put that on pay-per-view.
Oh, there's somebody who shows up, I think, next week. That guy says, "Hey, we're in Australia now." Mike.
Okay.
Uh, then we got the 8-man tag for our main event. Triple X comes out. So it's Skipper, Daniels, Low-Key, and your starting winger for the New York Islanders, Vince Russo, taking on Dusty Rhodes, Jeff Jarrett, and the Road Warriors, i.e. the team from ice hockey if you have one regular size guy and 3 fat guys.
And what music did the Road Warriors come out to?
Abyss's theme with
They,
Oh, what a rush. Put right in the middle of it. Not at the beginning like other Road Warrior themes, but right in the middle of it.
yeah, so now the fourth and fifth people to use the Abyss theme, which I think this is just becoming a running joke. See how many people we can have come out to the theme that becomes Abyss's theme.
I will say at the very least there isn't the annoying lyrics to this one.
Well. So who was the other person? Monty Brown was first. Who was the person in like October? Was it Ace Steel, right?
Yeah, Ace Steel came out to it.
Yeah. Oh Lord. So this match had no heat, partly because last week Jeff Jarrett beat all three members of Triple X by himself. So why should he have any trouble now when he has three partners? Um, and Animal was in for a few seconds. Hawk was in for a few seconds, but it was mostly a 3-on-1 handicap match with Triple X versus Jeff Jarrett. It Russo knees Jarrett in the balls, which Jarrett no sells, excuse me. Jarrett eventually makes the lukewarm tag to Dusty, who wanted Russo in the ring, but just as Russo gets in the ring, Mr. Wrestling 4 runs out and hits Dusty with a chain. Skipper rolls over onto Dusty and gets the win. After the match, Mr. Wrestling 4 takes off his mask, and to the orgasmic disbelief of Mike Tenay, it's Nikita Koloff. And either the crowd, I think it's a combination. The crowd didn't know who it was and didn't give a fuck because the crowd did not react at all. But Tenay did have a triple orgasm at the sight of Nikita Koloff. And
That's because Larry Zbyszko still has a copy of Pro Wrestling Illustrated with a bathing suit Missy Hyatt fold out on it. I have stunned Arya to silence with that one. I am proud of myself.
I'm more like, where the hell did that come from? We were talking about the 8-man tag. You brought up Larry Zbyszko having an issue of PWI.
I meant Mike Tenay.
And okay, so Mike Tenay having Missy Hyatt fold out. What does that have to do with him orgasming for Nikita Koloff?
Because right before it, there is a story on Nikita Koloff and Dusty Rhodes being the superpowers. By the way, this is an angle that will happen in the next couple weeks. Spoiler. As for this match, meh. A 4, I guess.
I gave it a 4.5 because the match was Triple X versus Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
Like, hey, there were other people involved, but what the hell did they actually do? But yeah, so that brings us to the end of this fine, fantastic fucking show here. Match quality 3.29. Overall enjoyment, I don't know, something was wrong with me here. 4.5 out of 10. Like last week, at least the show seemed to be going quicker, and I think that was part of it. The shows are going quicker, it feels like. But they're killing the actual wrestling matches, all this bullshit, which is a Vince Russo self-fulfilling prophecy. Future build 1.0 out of 10. Next week, AJ Styles versus Larry Zbyszko and 3 title matches full of Vince Russo bullshit. Doesn't that sound awesome? Giving us an overall rating of 2.93. Way to fucking go, TNA. Way to fucking go.
You're welcome, Australia and Asia and what other third tier cable stations that are now carrying the pay per view all over the world.
By the way, Amazing Red was going to win the X Division title tonight, which is why I brought that up earlier, because it's supposed to lead to next week when Red would be put in a match with 37 stipulations on top of it to fuck him out of the belt. So,
Maybe him being in Japan was a good idea then.
yep. another fucking lackluster TNA show. There's like 110 of these, and we've done 28. We still have 82 to go.
And next week, it gets interesting, I guess.
Say, next week is when Raven shows up, I think. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see how that goes, because like that was the big feud that led to them doing the best number they do on the weekly pay-per-view era. They did somewhere in the range of 25 to 30,000 buys for that first Raven Jarrett match. And then they fucked it by having Jarrett win because of course Jarrett was going to fucking win. Like how there was any surprise to that. He's the fucking Triple H of TNA. Of course he was going to win.
I mean, at least there are times where he would actually let somebody else have the belt.
Yeah, but it was all designed for him to get the belt back.
I don't have a problem with that because Triple H held onto that belt with an iron grip with people who deserve it just as much, if not more, than he did. Like, he held onto that belt until when it was introduced. So what? Goldberg came in.
Well, even then, he had to beat Goldberg first. When he had a fucking torn groin and could barely move, he still had to beat Goldberg. So I I never want to hear any of these fucking stories about Triple H nowadays. Like, yeah, fine. He's a daddy hunter. He's, booking to make everybody happy and all this fun shit. And he was the fucking NXT booker forever, and that was great. But he's still the selfish prick that couldn't let anybody else get over on him. That still made people fucking miserable. That needed to fucking bury, four or five people at a fucking time. That fucking time that you know, we mentioned this on the show before, that Carlito, Lance Cade, and Trevor Murdoch were beating him down. Paul London and Brian Kendrick ran down for the save, and so Triple H beat up Cade, Murdoch, Carlito, and then beat up London and Kendrick for making the save for him. You know, and there was that time that Chris Masters had gotten out of rehab, so he was off, whatever he was on, you know, add to whatever you want to. So he lost a lot of muscle mass, and they managed to write a segment where Triple H mocked him for doing that. And honestly, Masters should have punched him in the face.
Yeah.
But fuck Triple H.
And he's kind of a reason why I don't watch WWE right now.
Because the show still has to revolve around us sucking Triple H's dick. He's the person that had to go out first on Monday. He's the person that has to go out at the beginning of WrestleMania. All that fucking bullshit. you know, fuck that shit. But anyway, that's going to do it for this show.
Hey,
Anything?
we went through that show fast.
Well, it's amazing what you can do when you're just trying to get through some awful, awful, awful shit. Anything you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, let's plug something important. Donate to the Red Cross to help the survivors of the LA wildfires.
There you go. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we will talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye bye.